kid, welcome to KidTime StoryTime. I am very excited to introduce you to this book right here about this fella right here named Frederick Douglass, who was so incredible, changed the world with the power of his words. They called him super cool things like a philosopher warrior.
Oh, that sounds really cool.
And a giant in American life.
You got my attention.
And maybe my favorite title of all, StoryTeller.
Oh, did he read kids' books and sing songs?
No, not that kind of storyteller. He told different kinds of stories.
Like what?
Well, he wrote books, and he wrote essays, and he had a newspaper.
Oh, like his own paper to do articles and stuff?
Mm-hmm. And he told stories that inspired people, that educated people, and told people the truth about slavery in the South, back where he came from.
You're saying that he was a slave? Oh, wow, that sounds terrible.
But that's what makes it so incredible. He came from nothing.
Slavery, yeah, that's pretty much nothing. Yep, nothing.
You don't have anything. And he grew to become a massive figure in American life through what?
The power of his words? Really?
Mm-hmm. He did that all by himself. So, you ready to get your Frederick Douglass on?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to be taking notes because I, too, aspire to be an inspirational philosopher, warrior, giant of American life. You're welcome.
Oh, thank you, Green Bear. So, let's learn more about Frederick's journey. You see this? Whenever you see italics in the book, that's words with a little slant, that is a direct quote from the man himself. You have seen how man was made a slave. You shall see how a slave was made a man. Frederick's journey, like so many of the really inspiring journeys that we still talk about dozens and dozens and dozens of years later, even though he's been long gone, it's because they were so extraordinary that they inspire us and they lay out a vision for the future that we can still follow. Frederick was taken from his mother when he was a baby, and she was beside herself. How could she not be? The little baby was taken away and sent to live with his grandparents. His mother slaved 6 days a week from sunrise to sunset on another farm 12 miles away, and she longed to see Frederick, but walking the 24 miles round trip and getting back by dawn was almost impossible. Only 5 times did he feel her loving arms around him. I do not recollect ever seeing my mother by light of day. She would lie down with me and get me to sleep, but long before I waked, she was gone. He heard whispers that a man named Old Master was his father, but he was never sure. Grandfather Isaac was free. Grandmother Betsy was a slave, and she cared for all her grandchildren, knowing how painful it would be when she had to give them up. Her loving hands bathed Frederick, fed him, nursed him, and hugged him.
Oh, a storyteller, that is what all grandmothers and abuelas have in common, no matter where they are from or what color they are.
And what is that, Abuela Bear?
They all are about love, and they make you feel good, and they care about you, and they hug you, and of course, they make you delicious food.
Ah, yes. Abuelas are all about that, no matter what your abuela looks like. He ran freely among the corn stalks, which tickled his face and legs. He watched squirrels scamper up trees and bury their nuts in the earth. Grandmama taught him to fish. He dipped his thread, line, and pin hook into the water, but only got a few nibbles, while she scooped up scores of shad with her handmade nets. Living with my grandmother, whose kindness and love stood in place of my mother's, it was some time before I knew myself to be a slave. Meaning the kid, he was just a happy kid, enjoying his grandmother's love. He didn't know he was a slave yet. The summer he was 6, his owner ordered his grandmother to bring Frederick to him. Her loving hand trembled as they walked 12 miles to a place with grand houses and hundreds of black men, women, and children. Remember how his grandmother knew that she would have to give him back and raise him with great love and care, knowing how much it would hurt later? This is that moment. They are kin to you, Grandmama said, pointing to 3 children. Go and play with them. And of that moment, Frederick wrote, I really did not understand what they were to me or I to them. Brothers and sisters we were by blood, but slavery had made us strangers. Those were his siblings. He didn't know it. They'd probably been raised in different areas, kept apart. I don't know the full details of that. I don't know if anyone does because nobody kept records of this stuff, but we do know that families were kept apart all the time. Frederick feared that if he played with them, his grandmother would leave without him. And she did. And he wept. Grandmama was all the world to me.
Oh, this part makes me so sad. It must have been so heartbreaking for everybody.
Yep, it was. But as you're going to find out, so many of the journeys of great inspiring people started off with a lot of hardship and pain. And somehow they used that to become great, greater than anyone could have imagined. Old Master made Frederick sleep on a clay floor in a closet covered by a coarse blanket.
Ah, that makes me mad. Why couldn't he give him at least like a nice bed?
Disco's not a nice guy.
Ah.
I know. Makes me too. His only clothing, an itchy shirt. He ate sitting on his naked behind with an oyster shell spoon, scooped up cornmeal mush out of a trough. The children were called to eat like so many pigs. He that ate fastest got most. I have often been so pinched with hunger that I fought with the dog for the smallest crumbs. Then Frederick's mother died when he was 7. He was never even told she was ill. That's a lot, right? You're only 7 years old and you've already gone through all of that. But did it break him? One morning, screaming woke him. Old Master was shouting ugly words and whipping Frederick's Aunt Esther. I was hushed, terrified, stunned, and could do nothing. Her fate might be mine next. Meaning he was afraid that if he said something, they could hit him with that same whip. He saw more beatings and a few times felt the whip on his back. Another aunt ran away, and try as Old Master did, he could not find her. And thus, the germ of an idea was born in his head. Her success made me seriously think of escape. That is what you call hope. After 2 years, Old Master gifted Frederick. Now remember, when you're a slave, you were property. They could just trade you and stuff. So that's what they did with Frederick. They gifted him to relatives in Baltimore, Maryland. Free blacks lived and worked there. His new mistress, Sophia Auld, gave him a clean shirt and pants to wear. He ate at a table now and slept in a straw bed with a cover. He cared for Mistress Sophia's 2-year-old Tommy. That's right, though. Even though he was a kid, he was still assigned a job. He was a babysitter. That was sort of a job that they gave to other little children who were slaves because they couldn't do manual labor outside, but that was one of the jobs they did when they were small. In his free time, he was allowed to play in the neighborhood with poor white boys his age. Mistress Sophia taught him the alphabet in simple words so that Frederick could read the Bible. But her husband was furious, insisting that reading will forever unfit him for the duties of a slave. So she stopped teaching him. So the other guy was afraid that if he learned how to read, he wouldn't be a slave anymore because he would have too much knowledge, because knowledge is power. So she stopped teaching him, but something was already planted in that brain. Frederick sensed that words had power. While the family slept, he sneaked into the library and sounded out words in books. Have you ever done that? He was doing that. With his white playmates, he traded food for words in his copybook. For a single biscuit, my hungry little comrades would give me a lesson more valuable than bread. So even though he's a little kid, he's figured out this is the stuff that really matters. So I'm going to go hungry a little bit and make a sacrifice because the book is going to feed my mind. Day by day, month by month, year by year, harder and harder words. He could not stop, even though he risked whippings if found out. Because remember, the owner did not want him to know how to read. Frederick read newspapers he found on the street. He copied letters with chalk on fences and sidewalks and barrels. He polished boots for money and bought a book of speeches about freedom. How wondrous to learn that people used words to teach and convince, and that some white people hated slavery. There was hope in those words. And here's the key thing. Remember how reading gave him hope of a better day? That aunt who left and never came back gave him hope that maybe he too could escape and be free. And reading these words gave him hope that he could learn and that people out there also hated slavery. Hope. That is what changes everything. 6 years later, Frederick was returned to his old master who died the following year. So Frederick, you think he'd be free, right? Nope. They just passed him on to another master. And he found Frederick, to be too uppity for a slave. That's sort of a slang for being too smart, knowing a little bit too much, more than what the owner was comfortable with him knowing, since obviously Frederick had developed his mind. He had to be taught a lesson. He rented Frederick to a farmer who starved him, worked him, and whipped him until his spirit was broken and he stopped dreaming of freedom. That's tough. Because when you want to do something and everyone is against you and the whole world is pushing against you and beating you down, and in this case, literally beating you down, it's easy to lose hope. But hope is the only thing that can keep you pushing forward. Will he get his hope back? Then one day, Frederick fought back. He knew he might be killed for fighting back. This battle was the turning point in my life as a slave. I was a man now. It inspired me with a renewed determination to be a free man. And this farmer never touched him again. His new master sent Frederick back to Baltimore, where now he fell in love with Anna Murray. But it was hopeless to think of marriage. He was a slave. Anna was a free black. For them to be together, Frederick would have to escape to the north. Anna would follow. His first attempt failed. The second time, he posed as a free seaman. He dressed up like a sailor, and his fiancée, the woman he loved, used her money to buy him a costume to go in disguise. It worked. He jumped onto a moving train heading north. The conductor asked for his papers and didn't realize that his papers described somebody else. Train, steamboat, train, and finally, arrival in New York City. Free earth under my feet, a new world. Frederick then sent for Anna, and they married, and they moved to New Bedford, Massachusetts. And he took a new last name, Douglass, to make it more difficult for his owner to track him down. Where did he choose that name? Was it random? It was inspired by a famous poem of the day. Soon, he was lecturing in states as far west as Indiana and Illinois. He spoke about his life as a slave because he could tell people the reality. A lot of people didn't know. There was no television. There were no videos. It was basically what people heard. So his account mattered incredibly because it was a first-hand account of the realities. And he spoke about prejudice in the North as well. I went in pursuit of a job of caulking, but such was the prejudice against color that white caulkers refused to work with me. Many northern whites did not like what Frederick said, and they threw eggs at him and beat him up, but nothing stopped him from speaking the truth. Many white people did not believe that Frederick, who spoke so well, could have ever been a slave. Because remember, they didn't let slaves get educated, so it didn't fit in their mind that somebody could be so educated even though they'd been a slave. They didn't know that he was extraordinary and had gone to great lengths to learn, to write, and to read. He wanted people to believe him, of course, so he wrote his autobiography. At this point, he's writing his first autobiography. He would write 3 of them. He was only 27 years old. He's done all this living and all these experiences already by age 27. He did not shy away from naming his owner and describing the places where he lived. His friends did warn him that this put him in danger, but he did it anyway, and the book became a bestseller. But now his owner knew where he was. Frederick unhappily left his family and went to Great Britain and Ireland, where slavery was outlawed. And for the first time in his life, he felt truly free. I have spent some of the happiest moments of my life in this country. 2 years later, friends bought Frederick his freedom for $710.96. He returned home and started a newspaper named the North Star because slaves followed that star to freedom. In articles and speeches, he insisted that all Americans should have equal rights. And his words angered some people because some people do not like change. I hold that women as well as men have the right to vote. That was a big deal because women didn't vote back then, nor did any black people whatsoever. So he was campaigning for both black people to be able to vote, starting with black men, and then getting women to vote as well. So he joined that movement as well because he believed in freedom and equality for all. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. He wrote that because he wanted the values of the country of freedom and equality for all to truly apply to all, including his people. It was a crime to help runaway slaves. Frederick admired Harriet Tubman, a former slave who risked her life to lead others to freedom, and he wrote to her, "The midnight sky and the silent stars have been the witness of your devotion to freedom." What a poet, right? Anna and Frederick defied the law too. They became conductors on Harriet's Underground Railroad and hid whoever knocked on their door and needed help. The issue of slavery then exploded in the Civil War between the North and the South. President Lincoln had said many times that slavery was evil, but insisted he didn't have the power to end it. After 2 years of war, he changed his mind and issued the Emancipation Proclamation. If you haven't heard about that already, you're going to hear tons about it. It was a super duper moment, super important document, and it freed millions of black Americans, ending slavery. Frederick cheered with thousands when the news was announced. I never saw joy before. Men, women, young and old were up. Hats and bonnets were in the air. Frederick insisted that black men be allowed to fight for their freedom. He traveled from town to town, urging them to join the Union Army. Thousands signed up, including his sons, Louis and Charles. Now, black soldiers got only half pay and were given inferior weapons. The South often killed black soldiers that they captured. Douglass met with Lincoln and insisted they be protected. He did not let me feel for a moment that there was any difference in the color of our skins. I am satisfied now that he is doing all that circumstances permit him to do. And the friendship and collaboration between Abraham Lincoln, the president, and Frederick Douglass, the warrior poet, became a legend. They worked together, they believed in the same cause, and they both helped one another achieve greatness. After 4 years, the North won the war, but Frederick's happiness was marred when Lincoln was killed. Slavery was now ended everywhere in the United States, but Frederick saw more work ahead because he was a visionary. Right? That's what visionaries do. They see far down the road. And even when they can't finish achieving all their visions in their lifetime, the incredible thing about them is that they're so inspirational. They lay out a plan for us to be able to then follow and continue to make those visions come true because they are good visions. Slavery is not abolished until the black man has the ballot. That is the right to vote. The new president, Andrew Johnson, did not agree with Frederick, so Frederick took to the road again to convince others using his power of words. It took 4 more years until the lawmakers agreed to give black men the vote. Douglass had traveled far, literally and figuratively, from slave to free man, from illiterate, someone who could not read, to educated, from powerless to powerful. It had been a difficult journey. He knew his people faced more difficulties ahead and often reminded them, what is possible for me is possible for you. And in fact, It was. He laid the groundwork for so much progress. And in fact, it's because of him that Black History Month even exists today.
Wow, what, did he start it?
Well, actually, no, Green Bear, he didn't start it, but what he did do was he inspired others, like you want to.
Yeah, I totally want to be an inspiring figure.
He inspired others, and because of that inspiration, somebody actually started a Black History Week in honor of Frederick Douglass and his friend Abraham Lincoln, the president.
Oh, that's super cool. So it all started because of him? Yeah, and then it became a whole month?
Yep, that's exactly how it went. It started with a week, then it became Black History Week, then it became Black History Month, which we celebrate to this day to honor achievements by African Americans in America and also around the world.
Yeah, it's pretty cool how, like, one man can completely change the world and then, like, tell stories and help people see what life is like and help them make life better for other people, like their fellow man.
That's exactly right. Because how can we help our fellow man if we don't know that they're suffering, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. That must have been a rough story to tell. Yeah, with everything that he went through and his mom and stuff.
Yeah, it was. Which shows you just how courageous he was to still keep on pushing forward, because it would have been so easy to just give up and not fight back when you have no power.
Yeah, I'm really inspired, and I'm going to read more about him now, okay?
Oh, right now? Okay.
Yeah, I like that too. And thank you, Mr. Douglas, for like making things better for people of other colors. Like, do you think like he would have liked pink bears?
I totally think he would have loved pink bears.
Oh, yeah, I was hoping you'd say that.
Yeah, he loved people of all the colors. All right, kid, I hope that you feel inspired and learned something here with me today. And remember, whatever you want to achieve, you have to work hard and fight for it, no matter what. See you next time, right here on KidTime StoryTime.